Hello and welcome to a conversation on the Daily Bern. I'm your host, Eric Miller, joined today by an awesome progressive from the great state of California, running in a deeply red district, which we'll get into, running for House Seat 42. Talk all about that, pull up a map and so forth. Liam O'Mara, how you doing, Liam?
Howdy, glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for taking some time to chat with me. I think you come up in Ballotpedia as William O'Mara, so if I'm not mistaken. So William, but you go by Liam O'Mara.
Yeah, Liam's an Irish abbreviation for William.
Right on.
So the ballot designation says Liam O'Mara.
Right. Cool. So the website, I'll mention it a bunch of times. You are a clean money candidate. We're rejecting corporate PAC money. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking to you. And we'll talk about your platform and why the incumbent Republican is terrible. But your website is liamomara.org, OMARA. So grassroots campaign. Liam needs our help for volunteering, for donations. I'll say that several times as we go. So go help him out. So let me before we get into your platform and stuff, anyone I talk to from California these days, I ask the state of the fires and so forth. Like, is that within your district? What's that looking like?
Yeah, actually, this is the third time in 4 years that I've been directly threatened by them too, which is just insane. I mean, my grandfather had a little place way up in the mountains, up at 6,000 feet, and my mother held on to that, so it's like a little family retreat. And I, because I often have time off during winter and summer break to do writing and whatnot, I would spend time up there. So I got caught there 4 years ago when the Blue Cut fire hit, and actually they locked everything down. The fire got to within like a tennis ball's throw of in town. Wow. So that was fun. Then what? 2 years ago, or one year ago, 2 years ago. Oh gosh, I'm hard. The Holy Fire, a huge one that came up over the Cleveland Mountains. That got to a block away from my house down in Elsinore. I got to like walk out and stand on the street corner, and like one side, no fire, the other side, hellscape. It was fascinating, but really close, and yeah, definitely scary. And then it happened again here because of the pandemic. Weird situation. So I live in Lake Elsinore in Southwest Riverside County, and despite being in a city, I actually can't get internet to my house. We have terrible infrastructure in this country for rural Americans, and I live on a dirt road in a less developed part of the city limits. So they just never bothered hooking it up to anything. I'm actually on a well. I don't even have municipal water or sewer. So I ended up having to take over the cabin just to get a cheap DSL. And it's just bizarre that in a tiny mountain community that's unincorporated at 6,000 feet, I get better internet than at home. But now I'm trapped. I was trapped here for a little while and under evacuation warning because the fire in the Angeles National Forest got real close.
Right. Wow.
So yeah, it's crazy. We got to do something better about this.
Yeah, no doubt. And obviously you are a proponent of fighting climate change, Green New Deal principles, and so forth. We'll get into that. Just a little bit about your history. So you are. I mean, give me a thumbnail of your history. You're a teacher. Your history with progressivism, causes, democratic politics, and so forth.
Oh, let's see. Short would be I have a totally working class background. I'm the first person in my family with a college degree, and I so expected never to go to college myself that I didn't even bother taking the SAT out of high school. It was just pointless. Why bother? And I didn't get into college until I was 30. So along the way, I worked maintenance. I worked as a fry cook. I was a longshoreman in the port of LA and Long Beach. And I actually had a Class A truck driving license for 20 years because I drove trucks down in the port for a while. Okay. But found a way into college at 30 and went straight through to a PhD. So first in my family with a degree, I decided to pick up 3 of them because why not? I guess I'm crazy. But I figured if I've got a way in, and it's too long a story to explain how I got in the first place, so I'll leave that out. But I found my way into it, and I decided, I'm going to go through and do something that genuinely appeals to me, like that I feel I could really contribute in, because I was always frustrated in this an inability to really give back, to do much. I mean, I was an activist every now and then. I got involved in environmentalist campaigns and whatnot, but there's only so much you can really do. If you're not, I don't know, like, rich or in politics or blah, 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 and I wanted to like give back in some way. And education suits me in the sense that I am a nerd. I mean, the, cat. The standard joke is that my house is all books and cats because I have 34 bookcases and 3 cats wandering around on top of them. But yeah, that's my hobbies. What are your hobbies? I read and talk. So being a college professor just made sense. So that's like how I got into what I do now. I mean, my current profession is technically I'm what they call a historian of ideas. So I study like big systems of thought as opposed to a specific location or period. So all my interests kind of like span, the geography and time periods. And my areas of focus then are the Middle East and Europe, which Middle East politics, obviously a big touchstone for American policy, things we need to do better at. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I might ask you about, I'm getting a bit of an echo. I don't know if you maybe have, do you have earbuds by any chance?
Let's see.
If you do.
Is this any better?
Now I'm not getting the echo. Good.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, sometimes it's a matter of like getting the mic volume just set just right for where it is.
Right on. You are a nerd.
Right.
That's awesome. I only have 2 cats, so I can't, you're winning on that front.
They've definitely varied over the years. At one point I ended up taking over my father's place out in the high desert and took over his cats as well as mine. And my partner at the time, she had a cat. So there were 9 on the property, which is a bit insane. It's like, definitely into crazy cat lady territory here. So 3 is a much more manageable number for me. This is good.
Love it. So let me ask, like, what, it's a deeply red district. It's, you go look at the Cook numbers and stuff, and it even just says solidly Republican. Like it's, off the charts even, right? Like they don't even. So what inspires you to, to be David in that battle against Goliath in your district?
Yeah, the Cook numbers. I mean, I think the last one was like R+8 or 9. I think it's more likely an R+7 now because so much registration has changed in the last year. So it'll be interesting to see if that's if my guess is right for next year, because the largest city in the district actually flipped majority Democratic. In the last year and a half. We watched it slowly drifting over. The southern part of the district is solidly red. The northern part is much more blue than red, and portions in the middle are all purple. So it's really kind of mixed. What it's red in is its electoral history, not in its demographics. I mean, it's 40% Hispanic. There's a significant working class contingent. There's tons of people out with that have moved into the new bedroom communities from out here because they're priced out of LA and Orange County. So they just cross over the mountains and then commute, which is, of course, one of the reasons we have, among the worst air quality in the entire country.
Right.
But yeah, the southern part there that you've got is all red. The northwestern segment of it as it goes up, that's more purple to blue.
Okay.
But it has had a Republican incumbent. This is his 28th year in office.
Wow.
So in that sense, that's why they say solidly Republican, because he seems unbeatable.
Right.
And everyone that runs up against him runs into the same kind of problems. For me, looking at the race, the district and its history and Calvert and who's run against him and how, the progressive policies were actually a really good fit for the district and more of a model. In fact, in 2008, someone came within 2 points of beating Calvert on a much more progressive left platform. But when you run more generic liberals, they end up getting crushed.
Right.
So it really depends on whether you can connect with working class voters, whether you can offer them a compelling vision, and you can get people past the D and the R brand and get them thinking about what you can do for them.
That's great. The guy I had on yesterday is running for South Carolina House, Keith Gray. He framed that perfectly. He said, in his district, same thing, a long-term Republican incumbent, and the party has run to the center, right? Middle of the road candidates, right? And he said, what you usually see in the middle of the road, roadkill, right? So
yeah, yellow stripes and dead armadillos.
Right. I thought that was an interesting framing. So it's interesting that you say that. And I do want to get into how terrible he is and so forth. But since I have the district up here, Anything else we should know about it? I like to give people an opportunity to brag about their district. What's unique or awesome or
And it's just physically gorgeous, and it has like a really good cross section of what makes Southern California so interesting. And it's so close to everything else. You're close to mountains, you're close to beaches, but it's a lot of like, hilly landscapes in the western part there. You're coming off of the relatively small Cleveland Mountains, only gets about 3,000 feet, but still gorgeous California oaks up there. Most of the population is concentrated in a strip down that freeway, down the 15. So from north to south there, because people will commute in along the 91, coming in from LA and Orange County, and then it's built up along the 15, which means further to the east, it's actually wild and rural. So there's tons of farms in the district. So it's an interesting mix of like urban and rural life, but it's mostly suburban in its built up areas, which means that we don't have a lot of industry. We still do not have a single university in district. Million people, no university. It's mostly these bedroom communities that have built up from people fleeing out of the because they're priced out of housing,
right?
And that, of course, is causing all kinds of other interesting problems in terms of like affecting the values and the rents for the people who are already here. We have a serious issue of like economic underdevelopment, but we can talk more about that when we look at just how little Ken has ever done for this area.
Yeah,
but it's physically gorgeous. It's huge. I mean, it's got a little bit of everything.
Awesome. Before I move away, let me pull up the website again, liamomara.org. Fancy little donate button, up here on top. Get involved, right? All your policies are broken out here. We'll get into a couple of them. Obviously, we don't have a ton of time to get through all of them, but go check out Liam's website, liamomara.org, and make a donation while you're there. Offer to volunteer, right? Make some phone calls. There's so many, progressive candidates running, in deeply red districts around the country, and they could, in this day and age, you can volunteer from anywhere. That's the beauty of campaigning. It sucks that we're in the pandemic and people, you can't do door knocking necessarily, but you also have a broader reach. So maybe hopefully we can get some volunteers for you making calls outside of the district. I heard you on TYT, and one of the things that you were talking about in the district that was a problem was you said traffic, right? And that made me wonder about public transportation. You said your district is largely a commuter type of workforce or whatever. Right. Can you talk about your plans for that? Do you have plans for public transportation in your district?
Absolutely. The single biggest thing we can do, though, in terms of cutting down the traffic, is cutting down the need to commute, which means building up the local economy, building up local infrastructure. Students, if you want to go to college or to university, you're commuting out. We have 2 small community colleges and no universities. So they make up a big chunk of that. And then because you don't have an educated workforce, tons of businesses are not going to bother coming out of the area. It was actually quite difficult to attract good medical talent as the population went up. Obviously, we need hospitals. You got to attract people out. So the lack of overall development is a big problem, and a third of the population commutes out for work, which really, when you combine that with all of the logistics jobs, all these little trucking facilities and whatnot that we have way too much of, we have massively awful air quality. So we do need to improve public transit. One of the things that I like to push is the development of light rail systems. And light rails, wherever they're done, they work. In fact, the one in LA is a fantastic model because it's immensely profitable. It really does cut things down. LA has trains? What? Because we associate LA with traffic, but it actually has a really well-traveled train system. I mean, I used to do that, like hop on the train in Long Beach, take it up to down to downtown, and it's been branching out to different areas, but it does not come down the 15 at all. So where we've got all this massive population that's built up in the last 15, 20 years, right, there's no service. There's no way to connect into that network and get out. So you're stuck driving. So that'd be one really significant thing we could do as well.
Yeah. When you talk to, I hate to focus on the makeup of the district, but you have to get these issues, these people-centric issues, to land with those voters, right? So when you, when you talk to them about something like this, public transit, does it resonate? Do they shake their head and yes, we need that? That would be great.
The traffic discussion does, which is again why I tend to frame things in terms of economic development. That makes a lot of sense.
Right.
People have been, um, we've really hit people hard with a lot of like anti-public transit propaganda over many decades in California. I mean, California actually used to have a relatively good local light rail and tram systems, and we tore all the stuff out and built freeways instead. You know, freedom of cars, and then now it's the freedom to like sit in traffic for 3 hours, which is just great. So you
Right.
can actually make some headway for some people. It's like, yeah, I don't want to take away your car. Your car's fine, but wouldn't you like to just, I don't know, maybe take a nap or get some reading done or like goof around on Facebook while you're on your way to work? You know, it's going to be a while before we all have self-driving cars. The trains are useful. And
Right.
one thing that's helpful too is if you talk about the contracts such that you're going to use local labor for building everything. You're going to create long-term local jobs. So as long as you have those contracts done right when things are built, it's actually contributing to the economy. And whenever you build those train stations, it does stimulate the local economy. People will build new shops and restaurants and everything else. And by focusing on that, you again get people's interest out here.
That's really great. Not to mention the long-term climate benefits of hopefully reduced carbon output and so forth. Can you talk about that? Again, tying it to the fires, and how is that resonating with people in your districts? Fighting climate change. I imagine Green New Deal has been propagandized against, right? So there's a stigma there to say it. But as I talk to candidates around the country, if I talk to a candidate in Maine who's on the coastline, they might say, when they engage constituents, they might say to fishermen, "How was your catch this year?" Right? And that's an entree into talking about the effects of climate, right? But whereas if she led with Green New Deal, they would automatically shut her down. How are you engaging around that, and what have you found effective, and is it working?
Yeah, one of the things that bothers me a lot about progressive and democratic politics is just how badly we'll frame issues. It frustrates me as a historian just noticing that progressives and populists used to dominate farm country. We used to dominate the heartland of this country. And we had a virtual lock on the House for decades as a consequence. And it's not like these areas were any less socially conservative than they are now. Right. We just talked about the economic issues first, and we framed things in terms of basic kitchen table economics. How does it affect your life? And I find that if you approach a lot of issues that way, it does matter. What I'm hoping is that more people can keep running in these purple to red districts around the country and use these kind of framing as more of a model, as a way that we can start pushing back against this. It's difficult still to raise money and get attention for them because people are used to the chase to the right sort of establishment model and ignoring it. But if we keep concentrating on the cities and ignoring these inland areas, we're just doomed, and we're never going to be able to take care of these big problems like climate change because we're never going to be able to hold on to the large majorities that we need in Congress to do it. With things like the Green New Deal, and this is where, again, like I can see where they were going with the naming of it, but they fell into a trap in responding to people on the environmental issues and not focusing on the New Deal part of the name, right? Because it is a New Deal, and the whole point was that it's a massive stimulus to the overall economy, that it's intended to help give people good, stable, well-paying jobs, right, and good housing. And in the process, we're tackling a lot of these other issues, right? But the idea in framing it in that term, those terms were to touch on the economy. And when I talk about it in those terms, it works. When people bring it up out here, you get people responding to all the propaganda. Well, how do you pay for this? It's crazy. We have so much national debt already. How do you pay for a Green New Deal? And I just start breaking it down like, infrastructure investments pay back 3 to 1 in increased productivity. It's a massive stimulus to the economy. As you're building more jobs out here and pretty higher wages, more people are spending money, which again stimulates the local economy. The whole thing pays for itself. It's just akin to like making an investment. Like you start any business by making an investment. That's all it is. It's not new debt or some kind of like crazy cow fart banning nonsense. Our incumbent is running hard against it though. He's tying me to a handful of things. The two biggest ones are the Green New Deal, which he basically says, I want to like take away your hamburgers and your air conditioning and all this crap, which just makes no sense at all. And then the national policing issue, which is like his single biggest issue right now. And it just all this, hyperbolic, frothing at the mouth, socialism, scary. And I'm like, no. Like Dwight Eisenhower and Richard Nixon were not socialists. And we're talking about investment in exactly the same way that they understood it from the Republican Party. And if you can, again, frame it in those terms, if you can frame it, national defense also helps too, I have found. I mean, the same way that Eisenhower sold the national highway system. The Department of Defense has consistently said that global warming is the greatest security threat the U.S. faces. And yet, we're doing nothing about it. So, if you care about that stuff, then, like, hello, this makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's, it's overcoming the fear, I imagine, a lot, right? So the propaganda, piques their fears, right? Deliberately, of course, that. And we've seen, I'm imagining every Democrat in every district has the ad with the white woman running in the garage out of fear. She's going to defund the police, right? It's just fear mongering, right? It's terrible. So when you talk to them, you have to assuage that fear. And like you're saying, you're making a positive case for it, right? It's not, it's not necessarily defunding the police. It's, funding more social services. It's funding investing, right?
Funding other, and honestly, it helps the police. The whole idea is to take away an unreasonable burden. I mean, the police should not be having to take care of like mentally ill people. Right. I mean, they should be there to take care of serious crimes. That's their job. But people often call the police because they're the only person they can think of and the only person who could come out and take care of something. I'm for funding other types of first responders.
Right. Yeah, often. And I think 911 is often owned by a local police department or so, it's going to get routed that way, right? So, it's all about the framing, right? So, and if you were a policeman, you would think, just like you said, boy, that would be one less burden in my job description, right? Why should a policeman be called out to, handle a wellness check and, things potentially go south or whatever? Like you said,
police chiefs all over the country have actually gone on record saying we don't want to be taking care of these kinds of things. This puts us in uncomfortable situations, and sometimes things get messed up. And then all we do is we focus on the screw-ups there, and really, all it's doing is it's pointing you to a giant, big, flashing red sign. There is a solution. Create agencies that can actually take care of these problems, and then let those people handle it. It just it helps everyone.
Yeah, you need the right tool for the right job. I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to, right? Let's talk a little bit about. So he's obviously running those fear mongering, BS ads. I'm going to just straight up call it that. I looked him up. He voted with Trump like 97% of the time. I'm assuming he's an anti-masker, takes corporate PAC money, et cetera, right? I'm assuming he's
98% funded by corporations and wealthy donors. It's all big PAC money. He has almost no actual donor network in the area, no volunteer base, nothing. He never campaigns out here. He doesn't do public events out here. He hasn't done a town hall in more than 10 years. He doesn't answer constituent questions at all. I mean, I know people have literally been told by office staff, well, Mr. Calvert feels that he's won enough elections that he doesn't need to talk to people who didn't vote for him.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, boy.
Like, what? I mean, he cares about his actual constituents, which are like Lockheed Martin and General Atomics and Sierra Nevada Corporation. And those are the people he cares about. He goes to their events, takes their cash, and then votes for every single use of force ever.
So you mentioned about internet and broadband, right? I've been talking this a lot with various candidates because, everyone, thanks to the pandemic, everyone's forced to work from home if they're lucky to retain their job. Students are homeschooling, right? So the burden of internet costs, if you lost your job, if you're a single parent, right? Now you have to pay for internet to, for your child to, maintain their education, right? So, is that an issue? Do you support universal broadband and tacking on to that? I haven't looked up Ken Calvert, but I would suspect that he would oppose it. And I bet you if I went through his donors, there'd be a telecom company in there.
Yeah, no, there's no chance that he'd be supporting anything like that because that's socialism. I mean, yeah, anytime you bring up anything like that about any kind of spending that actually benefits ordinary people, you can find Ken voting against over and over and over again. Everything that benefits large banks and defense contractors, oh, sure, he's all for that. Or land developers, oh, sure, he's all for that. No, I mean, you got those like municipal broadband initiatives all over the country that I mean the lobbyists have been working so hard to kill, but they provide so much better benefit because you're not actually trying to make a huge profit off of it. You're just providing a useful service. And realistically, the internet's a utility. We need access to it to do a good job. This pandemic, if anything, should have made that clear to more people. And yet America has terrible service because it's just this weird patchwork and people often just don't bother upgrading until they're forced to. There's tons of monopolies that can basically like to their customers because where are you going to go? You need Comcast as your monopoly provider. Suck it. And I'm like, this is not how this is supposed to work. And like, I don't know, the municipal water can't do that. You can't be like, well, I feel like dumping more arsenic in your water unless you pay me more. Like, no, that because we actually have effective municipal systems and good regulation. We need the same thing for these internet telecoms.
Yeah, here. I'm going to use the still of you thumbing your nose as the caption. That's awesome. Actually, you know what? Let me say that too. And I don't say this to blow smoke at the candidates when I say this, but like what an authentic person, right? When you're talking to someone that's a corporate puppet and every word is parsed, right? And you look at like the progressives that are in the House now, and watch Rashida Tlaib and AOC and Katie Porter, even like they are real people fighting real fights. Ro Khanna, Jamie Raskin, even right. Imagine Liam on the floor, like passionately speaking about what he just spoke about, right? You're not going to get there. Well, let me ask you, you're not going to get there and suddenly take a check from Lockheed Martin and then.
No, honestly, okay, so referencing the title of your show, I've actually been a fan of Bernie since he got into the House because we had that Gulf War there, and he gave these impassioned speeches, and I'm like, dude, who is this guy? I mean, why can't we get him? And I've been following him ever since. And that is a model for me, is people who actually are willing to take a principled stand, speak truth to power, and make an unpopular issue popular by talking about it well. And I mean, while our current representative is a ghost, the guy in 28 years has never chaired a committee. I mean, he's unknown nationally. I'm gonna be making a fuss and showing up on C-SPAN and doing interviews in major media because I want to push the national conversation. I want to get us talking about it. And you're never going to get the whole like very stuffy kind of like talking points I've memorized and like I can't depart from my talking points. I'm going to talk about the issues because I know and understand and love these issues, and I want to make a difference on them. That's amazing. What gets me into this.
Here. So, yeah, liamomara.org. Go donate, go volunteer. Let's just hit a few more issues, and, I'll ask you if there's anything we didn't hit on. Obviously, you want to protect unions' rights, women's rights. You're a, social justice advocate. Talk about any of those that inspire you to go down the path. What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, it's funny that the whole like SJW thing became such a slur. That like standing up for people is suddenly a bad thing. And I get some of the pushback about the balkanization and identity politics and the difficulty of bringing people together because intersectionality is more complex. You are talking about a much more colorful coalitions, of very different people trying to bring them together while everyone focuses on their own thing. But I think that we do have a responsibility to help each other, to elevate causes. I mean, there's no reason just to talk about things that only appeal to you or only appeal to a donor base if you're pandering. Right. I mean, the simple fact that a lot of California's indigenous people got screwed is enough reason for me to support indigenous rights. That's all I need. Right? If there is an injustice, I'm willing to talk about it. That said, I think that focusing a lot on issues of social justice, especially if you're running in these purple districts, is actually detrimental because it cuts out people that have Well, to be frank, they've never had to deal with these concerns, never thought much about them. It's just not interesting. So it's much easier for people to play propaganda towards them and then to just cut you off from dealing with them, which means that I tend to talk about all of these issues with groups that matter. I mean, the National Organization for Women endorsed me. They know where I stand on those issues. But am I running on bodily autonomy or reproductive rights? No, I'm talking about kitchen table issues that are going to draw in more people that, honestly, that isn't their first concern.
Right. You mentioned about your study in foreign policy. What, if you were in the House now, what would you focus on from a foreign policy perspective? What would you be working on?
There's really nowhere to start there. I mean, there's just a bazillion issues. I mean, I often get like caught flat-footed on like local issues. Something will happen in California, and I'm like, oh, I missed that because I'm like paying attention to African politics or something. The simple fact is for me that our foreign policy has been wrong for many, many decades, especially since World War II. All the way up until that point, we were much less engaged, in the sort of like corporate imperialist game. And we had our few little issues. I mean, crushing the Philippines, that sort of thing, but didn't have the same kind of like heft. We weren't the traditional imperial powers like Britain or France. We could still be called in as a neutral arbiter. I mean, the Iranians invited us in twice in the 1940s to help out, to deal with issues in their economy because they could trust Americans. At this point, people don't, because we have 800 military bases and we're essentially functioning as a mercenary unit for corporate America. And I think that's wrong. I mean, after World War II, we refused to step off of a wartime budget. We increased spending and have kept going up ever since then. And when you do that, when you spend that money, people find ways to use that. And it is subtly twisted. And this is not a conspiracy. I got to make this really clear. It's not a conspiracy. It's not a bunch of guys in a smoky room like, what do these suckers believe next year? Like, who do we bomb next? That's not how that works. It's actually much more organic. It kind of like just bubbles up from the circumstances. If you create certain circumstances, people will behave in predictable ways. We have created an institutional framework that encourages us to get involved militarily, not to get involved peaceably and economically. And I want to reorient us back toward engaging more economically and peaceably. Like let's build roads and schools and hospitals. Let's like go in and offer advice and help out. Let's, instead of thinking like, oh, well, let's play whack-a-mole with terrorists. It's a never-ending scam to suck our money into the defense contractors' pockets.
Here. Imagine Liam on the floor saying these very things. That's, that would be such a blessing. Yeah, and like you said, it's not a conspiracy. You don't need a conspiracy when mutual interests converge, right? It's a profit motive, which is never going away. I love your position on that as well. I'm assuming, well, let me throw these out too. So if you were in the House right now, you would vote for Pramila Jayapal's Medicare for All bill?
Yeah.
And you would not vote for Space Force military ever increasing budget?
No. I mean, no, I would be pushing hard back against every military budget. Right. I mean, there's just no way around that. It's one of the things that frustrates me about it. And instead of just voting against it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to offer alternatives. I'm going to offer amendments and revisions, because they'll often be like, well, we can't cut these projects. We can't cut spending on this issue because, I mean, the military industrial complex has done a really good job of spreading jobs all across the country. So that anytime you cut down spending on a particular area, it's going to cost some congressman some jobs in his district. Right. And then people can attack them on that. So no one is willing to vote against it. So provide amendments that shift that spending to useful areas, that replace it, right? So, okay, you want a $700 billion budget? Cool. Let's spend $200 billion of it on American infrastructure, building good infrastructure and, for us here, instead of supporting 800 bases overseas or whatever, Right. I mean, but instead of just like saying no and voting against it, I mean, it's too easy to use against you, and it's a wasted opportunity as far as I'm concerned.
Right on. Yeah, so I'm imagining you're getting tons of party support particularly from Nancy Pelosi, because she would want a big bench in state, right? So is that right? You get
Oh
party
yeah.
who loves you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Just total darling. Yeah. Yeah, that's interestingly enough, that is one attack that the incumbent has not been able to make. They've not been able to tie me in any way to the establishment, which is interesting because I am endorsed by the California Democratic Party and was unanimously endorsed by the California Democratic Party, and have strong support from the county Democratic Party, and from the activists, from the clubs. I mean, among Democrats, I still do pretty well because I'm not out there like insulting them and attacking them. When I disagree with something, I'll lay it out carefully. I'm fairly diplomatic about things like that. I mean, I was actually asked in one of the club endorsement interviews, in one of their like lightning questions, like, "Do you support Nancy Pelosi for Speaker of the House?" And I was like, "No." Right. And then they had to come back around and like, "Why did you say no?" Like, "Oh, we love Nancy." I'm like, "Well, we took the House in 2008 and we lost it 2 years later, in large part because we so bungled things like the rollout of the ACA and the messaging on that." I mean, I think that Pelosi is a fantastic figure in the party. She's good for the party's structure overall. She'd be a good whip for votes. I don't think that she's a good Speaker of the House. I think that she's a bad figurehead for us, and that's to say nothing about the whole like issues of all the big money that comes in and the opposition to that. That's a whole separate issue that honestly I'll point to as a problem with almost any Democrat. But I try to do that without saying you're a bad person. Because many people get into politics genuinely wanting to do something right. But again, it's the circumstances that corrupt. The system. I mean, Democrats felt that they couldn't give up that money because the Republicans weren't going to. So they chased the same millionaire dollars. The solution is put in enough people to change the balance of power and change the laws so that no one can do it. And they're not willing to run on that as an issue. Which that's where we have to come in. If we can put in 200 squad members, then we can clean up the act from a lot of the other Democrats. They'll flip their positions on those once we change the basic balance of power.
Yeah, right. Some will, some won't.
Some will not. Some will be replaced. Yeah, but again, like most people, I mean, do get in with the right motives, but the circumstances change them. And it changes their patterns, and it pushes them away from that mission. And I try to look for the best in people, instead to think about the circumstances and situations. How can we improve that so that the worst in us does not come out?
Yeah, well said. That reminds me of in 2016, one of the things Sarah Silverman said about Bernie, about his fundraising, that it wasn't taking corporate PAC money, wasn't a necessary evil; it was just evil. Which I thought was good.
It is.
Yeah. So
it absolutely is.
Yeah. And you're probably close to my 60th candidate guest, and none of them take corporate PAC money, running all over the country, uncorrupt, totally, seats within range. Like you could, there's no reason Liam can't win this seat. It is totally doable, right? It's a bit of a, it's
climb. Demographically, it's flippable, and honestly, Ken usually ignores his opponents. It's usually kind of like studied indifference, maybe one mention in the entire cycle. He's posting about me constantly, and both in the primary and in the general has sent out mass mailers to all independents and Republicans like, "This guy's crazy." He actually picked like a photo off of my, mind you, locked down personal Facebook profile, but pulled a photo off of that somehow that has like my hair down and my beard longer, and like, look at this crazy hippie. We can't have this guy here. He'll burn Riverside County to the ground. Like, wow. I mean, he's concerned, and he's concerned because of the national situation and Trump's unpopularity. The fact that for working Americans, this is a depression that we're in, and he's done nothing for that. Mm-hmm. And he's genuinely worried that we're reaching out to people on economic terms.
Yeah, here. Yeah, every time I see those poll numbers over the last couple of weeks, if Biden is up +8, +14, +16, or whatever, right? I imagine how much impact they might have on down ballot tickets, right? If your race had a +8 built in or whatever, right? I mean, that's oversimplifying it, but that's going to benefit. And then there are other races where it's sort of a reverse coattails kind of situation. So, like you said, the national situation is playing to your benefit. And the fact that he's paying attention to you. Any chance of a debate? Have you reached out for a debate? I mean,
He's, again, 28 years. He never debates anyone.
yeah.
He's an inveterate coward. He's never going to do it. So yeah, I mean, he was challenged to do it, but realistically, it's smart of him not to do it. He's not a great speaker. He doesn't have popular policies, and it would not go well. But we're doing our own. Actually, this weekend we're doing our own kind of like little comical. I wanted to do like one of those traditional empty chair debates, like a little printed out cardboard cutout of him, and then just have someone read out statements that he's made. But instead, because I have a film crew that does like little policy-based shorts for Instagram using puppets, we're taking their evil CEO puppet and making him Ken Calvert for the event. And he's going to read like a mix of like Ken's own words and like hyperbolic ways of describing just how awful he is.
Right.
And then, so that'll be fun. But an actual debate, no, I'd love it. I honestly most wanted to do that, but I never expected him to do it.
Yeah. Still worth asking, right? I look forward to seeing that puppet show thing, and each line. This position was brought to you by Lockheed Martin for $200,000, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think which endorsements are you most proud of, or something, is one of the last questions on there. It's like, yes, I'd like to thank my family and Lockheed Martin and General Atomics, and just listing off that, but nothing that actually helps us.
Yeah, and that's we're joking about it and laughing and stuff, but that's the end of the day point. Is he's voting against the material interest of his constituents. He's absent in doing so. I sort of throw that off flippantly that he's a terrible Republican, but it has adverse effects to his districts, and you outlined a few of them, and you have ideas and solutions, and even if those ideas don't fully get implemented, Liam is going to be a fighter for those ideas. If I lived in that district, do I want the guy who's not present, who is working against me, right? Or do I want the guy, maybe I don't agree with, maybe only 80% of your platform or whatever, but who's authentic and is going to fight? It's a no-brainer, So again, it's liamomara.org. Go, send Liam a donation. Offer to volunteer, share this video, like his social media, share his Instagram posts. The one on Saturday, you said, sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. Help spread the word. Like that goes so far. People are focusing on shit posting Trump only, but there are these local races that are so material. They can so change our lives, right?
Yes,
and
absolutely.
You mentioned the squad by name, but we need a bigger bench. Like, it's not just those four in Rotana and, Camilla Jayapal, et cetera, right? We have a lot of candidates that can run, that can, that can pick up these seats. Liam, Julie Oliver, Adam Christensen, Mike Siegel. There's a ton of them over the country, right? Imagine we had the squad times, 3 or whatever. Then you have real power in the House, and you can start swaying, like you said, get to a tipping point. So, I will get off my soapbox with that, but it's liamomara.org. Thank you for running and giving these policies in this position a voice in a district where it seems like heretofore it's been voiceless. So, kudos to you for that.
It's a good soapbox to be on, honestly. And we are already set to double the squad because a number of good primary wins we've got here. Bowman, Cori Bush, but we have to be going after these purple districts, and we have to be going after Republicans, because that's where we get a bigger difference. You're not just replacing, a bad Democrat, you're replacing a genuinely awful Republican. Right. And a lot of these districts are more flippable than people tend to think if we can shift the field of battle. They want it to be on social issues. There's a reason that Ken is running on policing. There's a reason that he's focusing on these kind of basic social issues, because that's where he knows he can whip up fear around people. He can't talk about actual policy issues because he'll lose. Right? And he knows that. If we can get people talking about that basic economic stuff and cut out this the culture wars crap that both parties have cultivated to hold on to a base, but in the process, of course, half of America doesn't bother with it. We just check out. But they've cultivated this culture war that holds on to their respective bases. We need to cut the BS and talk about kitchen table economics.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. So liamamara.org, go send them a donation. It's been a real treat to chat with you, Liam. I look forward to talking with you again and calling you Representative O'Mara. That would be a real treat, my friend. I want to close on the campaign ad that you just put out because I thought it was just really kind of sweet, authentic. Like I said, it's not, you can tell, I don't know who put this together, but it's not some big wig political DC consultant that makes $1 million, right? This is like real people with a real campaign. So I wanted to close on this. And, like I said, I thank you for running. Good luck on November 3rd, liamamara.org. Any closing thoughts before I hit play on this?
That really is the closing thought. And I guess the one thing that I'd add there is that we do have a lot more power than people think. I think there's been a learned helplessness that's sunk in on the left in this country. If you think that someone can write a $10,000 check and you can't, so why bother doing anything at all? But we can phone bank, we can text bank, and every $5, you send $5 a month to candidates. One of the things I like to point out is like, oh, it's nothing. It's the price of a Starbucks coffee, right? So thinking, well, the candidate doesn't need that. If a few thousand people send $5 a month, and you do that to progressives running in these purple districts all across this country, we can change everything.
Yeah. Think $20 a month and find 4. Pick 4, right?
Yeah, exactly. Pick people all across the country that matter to you. You mentioned Siegel, Adam Christensen. There's all kinds of great people that we can be supporting. If more of us step up and do this consistently year after year, we'll get in a 200-member squad and we can rewrite the laws and ban lobbying. That will change everything for us.
Hear, hear. Well, it's been a pleasure. Good luck on November 3rd, liamamara.org. Want me to close out on this ad? Thanks for talking to me. Godspeed. Hope to see you on the House floor next year, my friend.
Thanks much.